Today on the Freddy O Show, Jen Sugermeyer. She wants to help you reach the potential and reset the way you think about yourself. And she's a southpaw boxer, and I love boxing. You ready to get in the ring? This is going to be fun. Let's go.
Thank you for listening to the Freddy O Show, a podcast devoted to you, the listener, your purpose, your mindset, and your marketing efforts, designed to help you go to that next level. Now here's your host, Freddy O.
Welcome to episode number 8 of the Freddy O Show. This is your host, Freddy Owen, and wow, what a wonderful day to be alive. Sometimes it's hard to say that for some people out there, and I get it. Life can be rough sometimes, but remember this. If you feel a pulse in your wrist, now go ahead and feel your wrist. If you feel a pulse in your wrist and a breath in your chest, you still have a fighting chance to turn things around. Seriously, get up and never give up. That is one of the prime reasons I have so many guests on that are basically about mindset, because I think it's a crucial thing to help people out in this day and age. I honestly, right now is a rough time for a lot of people. And I'm praying for you. Seriously, I'm praying for you. I pray that if you are stuck in a situation, if you're mentally having a rough time, I pray that you get out of it and you realize that you were created with a plan and a purpose. Believe that. Like Roman Reigns says, believe that. Okay? Now, before we get rocking and rolling, I wanted to say thank you to you so much for tuning in today. It's always a pleasure to have you aboard, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. A quick friendly reminder that you can access all podcast show notes from today's episode at winwithfred.com. Also, the Freddy O Show is available on these other fine apps: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Podcast Addict, Podchaser, Deezer, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Castro, and Castbox. I truly appreciate your support. It means the world to me. Now, as we enter the ring, are you guys ready to get in the ring? I am. Okay, yep, a lot of boxing references today. I love boxing. We have a special guest, best-selling author, Jen Sugermeyer, lacing up the gloves. Jen, welcome to the Freddy O Show. Super pumped to have you aboard.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So let's get things cooking. I know you have a pretty compelling story. So who is Jen Sugermeyer?
Oh, wow. Well, the last 15 years I have spent in corporate doing everything from working down at the Department of State in Washington, D.C., to working over in Afghanistan, to working in the public and private sector in corporate America. So that's a little bit on my professional side. My background, which has led me to where I am today, with having released 2 number 1 bestsellers, and now life coach and motivational speaker, has a whole lot of content behind that. So if you'd like, I can go ahead and dig into that, or if you want to ask specific questions, we can lead up to all that. But
I want to dig into your story. So okay. Let's rock and roll with that.
All right. So back when I was 12, believe it or not, going back that far, my life started with an eating disorder, and I learned to live this double life at that age. And I mention that, I bring it back that far because there are these things in our lives that sometimes we don't even realize are happening, and yet they shape us into who we are as an adult. So I learned at a very young age to have this double life and to keep hidden what I didn't want people to see. And all of a sudden, here I am in my mid-30s. And even though I've been very successful in my career, I worked up to being a senior director in corporate America. And again, I had traveled all over the world, been to 49 countries, very successful, a lot of things happening in my life. And yet here I was leading another double life as an alcoholic, and I just did not recognize the person that was in the mirror. And it was a very unmanageable life for me to live. And everything that was happening behind the scenes, which you couldn't see, was really eating at my soul. And it was taking my joy. I was in and out of jails and hospitals. And, the unmanageability was more than I could really take. And I was getting to the point I was very suicidal. And so my life was sort of this disaster that was unraveling before my eyes. So what seemed to be a long time ago, kind of innocent and, this eating disorder, and I sort of had somewhat control over that, had become spiraled completely out of control by the time I was in my mid 30s. So it was over 2 decades of dealing with these two lives.
So when you say your eating disorder, is it because I've never had one? Well, I've overeaten. I've eaten terrible. I'm actually on the fast track right now, trying to get back into shape. But when you say eating disorder, were you chasing something with this eating disorder?
That's a great question. I'm 6'1", believe it or not, and I got real tall, real fast. By the time I was 14 years old, I was about 6 feet tall. And entering high school, if there's one thing I wish I could have told myself then, is that being unique is I believe, a blessing. But when you're that age, you want to look like everyone else. And so I was tall and a little round, and I had ventured and I had heard of these eating disorders, and I thought that was a good way to kind of stay slender or get slender, if you will. Because I knew both being tall and round wasn't what I wanted, and there was nothing I could do about being tall. And so I was not happy with who I was. And that's what the fundamental, at the core, that's what it was. I did not like who I was when I looked in the mirror. And so I tried to control that. And that was through what started as an eating disorder.
And then you said you went to, as you got older, you went to alcohol. And the thing is this, what you're saying is, I think a lot of people have gone through, but you've just been strong enough to put it on the forefront and to put it out there so you can tell people how you overcame those issues. Am I correct?
That's right. And, and it was being in the corporate world and being where I was, there was so much stigma around stepping out and saying, hey, I dealt with these issues. And there's I think we're afraid to say the word mental health. I think we're afraid, of what our company is going to think of us, or if we're going to lose our job, or what our friends or our family are going to say. And the reality is that so many of us are dealing with things. And now mine may have been an eating disorder or alcoholism or whatever addiction I was dealing with at the time. But we as humans, at the fundamental problem of what started when I was 12 was the same thing that I realized that when I was 35 years old, that, hey, you know what? I don't know who I am, and I've become disconnected, and I was not happy with the person that I was. And so I had tried for so long to go after what I thought was the symptom, right? Treat the bulimia, treat the alcoholism, stop smoking cigarettes, whatever I was going through at that time. But really the problem was me. And so that's why I've taken such a firm stance on speaking up, because so many of us are dealing with this, and yet we just don't want to say anything because of the fear of the repercussions.
What do you think is the best definition of happiness?
Wow. I think there's a level of peace that you have. Happiness is, I looked at so many people for so long, and I thought, man, they look happy, they have kids, or man, they look happy, they have money, or they look happy, they're married. And I chased these things that I saw that other people had. And really it's defined by the person. I think, yes, a lot of those things can bring what we consider happiness, but it's really, where do we feel at peace? Where is it's a state of mind, it's a mindset, and it doesn't always include, a spouse or kids or a lot of wealth or some of the things that it might be to others, but where you feel at peace and content with your own life.
I 100% agree with that. That's a great answer. Peace and content, because there's certain things that people chase. Like you said, I've chased things. For me, it was the feeling of actually feeling good, and not necessarily drugs, but I would supplements, and then you would go into the alcohol aspect of it, and with us COVID, alcohol is like the number one go-to for a lot of people. I take a walk, and every time I'm walking, I go by a liquor store, and that place is consistently packed. The cars are completely filling up the parking lot, and people are going towards that right now. And I actually at one point did that, and I finally luckily I realized that. I was like, wait a second, what am I doing? It's tough. Life is tough, and I think it's something that people they don't understand what happiness really is. Having a lot of money doesn't make you happy. Being the coolest kid in class doesn't make you happy, as long as you're yourself. If you wear a mask, I think that's a huge problem when you wear a mask and you think that that's going to define who you are, because it's not you. People know me as Fred. I'm a funny guy, and I love just being myself. I love making people laugh. And sometimes at my own expense. I had sort of the same situation you went through in school. I got picked on a lot, but it's just something that happiness is peace. I love that. I love how you just said that. Happiness is peace. So when did you actually realize that you were happy?
So I'll talk a little bit about my sobriety if I can, and how that all came about. And,
Certainly.
I tried for a decade. I acknowledged for about 15 years that I had a problem with alcohol. And for 10 years, I was trying so many different things. And I, neuro-linguistic programming, acupuncture, hypnosis, groups, just cold turkey, whatever I was trying. And I kept trying to quit something. And I would always do this if I got into a relationship, then I would be happy and I would stop drinking. And if I would get this job, then I would be happy and I would stop drinking. And I went through this for 10 years. And finally I was dating someone, and we sat down, and he told me 7 words, and these 7 words changed the course of my entire life. And I hold on to these daily, and he could not have been more spot on. He said, "Jen, you need to learn to love yourself." And when I heard those words, they touched me emotionally, because, I was a blackout drunk, and a lot of times when people express care or concern, it was sort of in a negative way, or I was getting arrested, or whatever was happening was kind of negative. And here was someone that said, "You need to learn to love yourself." And I saw this person being alone for the rest of her life, and that was never the life that I had envisioned. And so I just, like addicts do, we get into something and we go all the way. And I committed for the first time, which is the first step in my program. And we can talk about that here in a bit, but is really committing to change. And so I went on this, the most amazing exploration, which now I've trademarked, and I wrote my first bestseller on the journey that I took. So my happiness, it was almost as soon as I started to commit to myself and say, "You know what, Jen, you're going to commit to finding that 5-year-old child that was going to be on stage and was going to be a singer and was so confident in herself that you lost somewhere along the way." So there was almost an immediate, once I started to change my mindset, and then it took a good 7 or 8 months for me to really, really see big transformations. It was a step-by-step process. There were phases through this, and I still grow every day, even though, I've had years of sobriety now. I still grow, and I still find more happiness. My life gets better every day, but it was a process. And so, and I think that continues to evolve, and it's something we have to continue to seek after. So that was a lot of information there, but I think it's important to kind of set the foundation of where that started. And it was with those 7 words and saying, "You know what? I need to find that person again," because it's not these ancillary then, it's not the, if you stop drinking, it's not doing neuro-linguistic programming or hypnosis. It was, which can all help, but it was reconnecting with myself. And that's where I found happiness.
So 8 months, it was a process, obviously.
Yes.
The seven words, when he said that, or she said that, what was your response?
Well, I think I froze for about 20 minutes, and I did. I saw this vision of this 5-year-old child who was just so excited about life and disappointed looking at her 35-year-old self. And then, I saw this person that was alone in her future, and that was never how I saw myself. So kind of when I got out of all these these thoughts that were flooding my brain, I looked at this gentleman and I told him, I said, I commit to you, I commit to us, and most importantly, I commit to myself, to learning to love myself. And we didn't have much more to say after that. And our relationship didn't last much longer after that. But I continued to commit to myself. And I have been sober ever since. May 13th is still my sobriety date. So it was a very impactful 7 words, but it really changed everything in my life.
Well, it goes without saying, we have things that we buy. We have friends that we take care of. A lot of times if you really look at it, I've done this before where I would take care of, I would make sure that this friend was okay, that friend was okay, or the car is super clean. But then when I looked at myself in the mirror, I didn't see anything. You look past yourself and you don't take care of yourself. And how can you take care of somebody if you can't take care of yourself? How can you breathe into somebody's life if you can't breathe into your own life? And I love that you can, life's tough, like we talked about. And it's the way you respond to it, and then look in the mirror and say, wow, I do love you. I need to focus on you. And then I can focus on other people, because I think that was one of my biggest flaws myself, was a flaw of taking care of other people, but not really taking care of myself. And down the road, it's going to have its consequences, with health, like you talk about health, gaining weight, you start feeling terrible. And, you don't take care of how you look on the outside, but you have a facade. So I think it's great. Take care of yourself, love yourself, and realize your self-worth. Am I correct in saying that?
100%. And that's exactly why they tell you on an airplane, put your mask on before you help others. Because if you can't breathe, you can't help others. And I think sometimes we think it's so selfish of us, maybe we have kids or spouse, family, we're taking care of things. And so we almost think it's selfish to take care of us. But if you can't breathe, if you don't have that engine kicking on the inside, you can still give to others. But I tell you what, I am able to give more now that I take care of myself, that I'm in a healthy state of mind, than I ever could when I wasn't. So it's not selfish. You're able to give more. I think it's selfless for you to be taking care of yourself. That's how you can give more.
So let's switch gears a little bit. You talk about, like, for instance, you got your website, you really put yourself out there, and that's awesome. How hard was that? Were you very fearful at first? Were you like, I'm just going to go ahead and do it? And as an entrepreneur speaking, doing this, were you afraid of what the response was going to be? Or were you like, what, if this is me, this is how it's going to be, and this is how I'm going to do it?
And I think that sort of like a wall coming down, it doesn't, usually it doesn't just implode and it's all there. But my wall came down in pieces. And at first I wanted to come out under a different alias. I wanted to have, a name for my book. I didn't want to come out as Jen Sugermeyer. And when I put my social media out there, I went under the name of J Shug. And, it was a process for me. It is extremely vulnerable. And I talk about vulnerability as part of some of the foundational steps in my methodology as well, is that, in order to really reap rewards, we have to take risk, and we have to allow ourselves, to be vulnerable in the process. And it was something I wanted, but I had to kind of take the steps in order to get there. So, it's, I remember my mom, she was at one of my speeches last year, and she looked at me, she said, "Is this weird that, me and your father are here?" And I looked down at her and I said, "Yeah, it is," because you're talking about things that, you can talk to a perfect stranger and say, "Yeah, I'm going through, whatever." But you look at some of the people that you care about the most, and you admit to them some things that you tried for decades to hide from them because you didn't want to hurt them. And at least that was your perception, right? And really they wanted, and all it did was keep a wedge in between you and them. So yeah, it's a process, and it took me time, but yeah, it's all out there now.
Well, as far as your relationship with your parents, it's obviously got better because you were able to open up to them. No matter
Yeah, right.
how, no matter how long it took, you still did it.
And, I realized I found that across the board in all areas of my life, not just my parents, but with friendships, with, my dating life. I was married and I'm divorced, and every area of my life, I could not have that close of personal relationships if I was trying to hide anything, period. And so as soon as I started to expose myself, and there was a lot more I talk about in the book as well. I mean, there's an ebb and flow that happens naturally between relationships. And if you're holding things back, like I don't need any help. I got this. I don't want to have any IOUs. So Jen Sugermeyer can take care of herself. I can do everything myself. I can get through this myself. I was very stubborn about that. And so I think, not being able to share that area of my life and accepting help. This could be in painting my house. I mean, it could be in anything, but there's this ebb and flow that happens. And so in order to get close to not just my parents, but other people, it's about getting honest. It's about accepting help. It's about having an open communication with people. And I lacked that across all areas. So I could only go so deep in all of my relationships.
Can I ask a quick question? When you finally did do that and you realized that, you know what, I'm going to do it this way, the feedback, because we always create things in our head. We always do. As humans, we create things, we create scenarios. Okay, they're going to react to this, they're going to react to that. I'm scared of this is going to happen. Everything we worry about, 99.9% of the time, it never does happen. The feedback, did you lose a lot of friends, or were you like, was it the other way around?
I definitely had built it up in my head, as you said. I think granted, much bigger than what it actually was. And I think when people, as humans, we're just curious. Well, what's actually going on? And so we make up things in our mind until we actually know. But once we know, then we're able to relate. So once people were able to relate with me, there was this either sympathy or empathy, or there was a connection, or there was just a better understanding. And so we were able to grow deeper together. I didn't lose a lot of friends. In fact, if anything, I started assessing who really was a close friend in my life. And as part of my methodology, I go through and I looked at people, places, things, and ideologies, and what didn't fit in my life. So if anything, I did the assessment on my end to say, do you bring that value to my life? But in terms of me coming out, yeah, I'm sure anytime you're going to get the good with the bad. It would be completely false if I stood here and said I've not had anybody come out and say something that was negative in nature. But the percentage compared to the positivity that I've received, it's completely worth it. If someone approaches you and says, "Wow, thank you so much for your honesty. That's changed my life," or "That's impacted my life," doesn't matter what anybody else is going to. There's almost 8 billion people in this world. You can't make them all happy.
And true. And a lot of times I think that when you are honest like that, it brings out the what they're going through as well, like you just said. And the people I think that might give you a hard time, those are just people in denial. I could be wrong, but people are in denial. They don't want to accept the fact that, you know what, I have some issues I got to handle, even the smallest of issues. You don't have to have your story is pretty traumatic. You don't have to have a big story like that to be going through something. To be a better person, to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I can change this. I need to start doing it now, but I have to rely on, me, and I have to, do it for me, not for anybody else. Do it for me. So your 2 books, you have one that you just came out with, and that was Defining Your Boundaries, the yes/no playbook to what you want in life. And you also have Reset, where you take your readers on a journey to reclaim power over their life, their mindset, and to learn love and respect themselves. Yes. We're writing those books. What kind of journey was that? How was that? How'd that work out for you?
So Reset is the exact journey that I took to get a handle on my life, to reclaim my life back. And everything in there, well, in both of the books, everything is what I went through and what I've learned along the way. And I've tried to boil that down into a methodology that people are also going on through their own journey. So I share a lot about my own story, and I give a lot of food for thought. There's a lot of questions in there, and so it's written really to be a self-help book. When I wrote a chapter in Reset on standards and boundaries, I was in San Diego at the time, and when I wrote that chapter, and when you're writing, you do a lot of research and self-reflection, and all things that I had gone through, but you still there's a lot of research and thought that goes on behind that. And when I was done with the chapter on standards and boundaries, I thought, oh my gosh, I've done a lot of work implementing this kind of structure in my life, but I have only scratched the surface. And I knew that my next book, I am actually still shocked that I wrote an entire book on boundaries. I thought boundaries was like, oh, do you kiss on the first date? I don't know. What do you, I thought that's sort of what boundaries were. I'm joking a little bit, but the reality is that they can protect you in your life and keep you in that state of happiness if that's what your goal is. And I realized that there was so much power in those. So my goal now is Reset talks about a lot of concepts at sort of a higher level. And now is to really dig in, and those will be my next books. You don't have to read; you can read them all independently. But this book, Defining Your Boundaries, is just that. It's setting what is just standards. What are your goals in your life? And maybe your goal is happiness. And how do you stay in that space by putting boundaries in your life? So yeah, so they were incredible books to write and extremely rewarding to get feedback and yeah.
So, fam, listen, we're going to have all this information in the show notes, show notes for this episode of episode number 8. But I want you to take advantage of actually going back there and grabbing that book, because it's always good to have that copy with you, just in case you have to re-reference back to it. You can highlight things, and you can learn a lot more about Jen by reading these books. But she also has Reset Coaching. And is that for people that the book maybe doesn't, maybe they need to go a little deeper with your concept?
I always encourage to have sort of that mentor, that accountability. Yes, the book walks through at a high level. People can read that, and I would hope that they can do their own reset. But I would always encourage just to have someone to talk to have that accountability. And sometimes people read through the book and, maybe it just takes a little bit deeper to walk with someone. So yes, I do offer one-on-one services. And at some point in the near future, we'll also have an online independent coaching program as well. So I'll get that out there probably by 2021.
Fantastic. That's awesome. So that'll all be in the show notes. But now let's go to, you like boxing, correct?
I do.
And are you actually a boxing fan, or are you just like boxing?
So I both. Boxing has been something that it came into my life. I was going through divorce at the time, and I think my friend knew that I needed a healthy outlet, and he encouraged me to take up kickboxing classes. And I'm a little gumpy. I don't play basketball, even though most everyone thinks I do. I'm not that coordinated. So I realized, maybe kickboxing wasn't my thing, but I really enjoyed boxing. And so I started with one-on-one coaches. This was back in 2012. And here I am 8 years later, and I still pick up the gloves. I've had various coaches. And yeah, I love getting in the ring. There is something about it, but there is a mindset that it puts you in. It's that internal power that that you have. And so it's always come at a place in my life where I needed a healthy outlet. And it's an incredible workout as well. So yes. So
it's a crazy workout. We have a thing that we were doing. And I have a heavy bag downstairs in my basement. A 3-minute workout, 6 rounds, 3 minutes for 6 rounds, 3-minute rounds. That's, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It can take a lot out of you.
Yeah.
And I've actually boxed my pastor. My pastor was in MMA. He sent me to the hospital. He said, Fred, hit me I'll hit you as hard as you hit me. Well, when you have technique, it's a little different. And he got me right in the side. And I'm going to tell you, it felt like my spleen exploded.
Yeah.
It ended up being bruised ribs, but still, it hurt. It's definitely a sport that requires resilience, the heart of a lion, and it's a good illustration, I think, when it comes to life, because you have to take the punches from all angles. And when you get knocked down, you have to get back up. So have you actually boxed somebody?
Yeah. I've had broken ribs too. And yeah, it completely takes the wind out of you. And, it's, you have to keep your eyes open, and it's one of the most intense. I played the drums for a little bit. I'm sort of like, what do they call it?
Jack of all trades?
Yes, thank you. Jack of all trades, master of none. So I think that's me, but I've tried. I kept dating drummers. So I tried that. And once you get that fourth limb going, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't do more than 4. And I think boxing is even more intense because I think you have 8 things going on. And so, just trying to manage your both legs and both arms and, your head, and it's crazy.
It's funny because when I first started doing it, I in my mind I looked like Mike Tyson out there. I was like, man, I probably look amazing. So then I recorded it. And let me just say I didn't look amazing, but I got better. I got stronger. And seriously, fam, it's a workout to actually get out there and just hit the heavy bag, but you can get a lot of aggression out. I used to get home if I had a bad day back in the day when I was working at the car dealership, boom, boom, hit the heavy bag. And it's a great workout, and it's so much fun to do. And I definitely recommend you do it. But don't get your ribs, that was
not so fun.
I seriously went down like a sack of potatoes. And my pastor, he said, I felt so bad, man. I go, well, you got me with the body punch. Okay. And he's been in professional fights. So I was sort of dumb for doing it, but I always like to try different things, and I usually pay for it at the end, but it was fun. So guys, make sure that you go back to winwithfred.com, go into the show notes, and get all that Jen has to offer. She has a free guide on learning how to love yourself. You can grab back there. Also her books, take advantage of getting those, as well as the reset coaching. We'll have more information on that and all social media avenues of how you can get a hold of Jen and learn more about, what she's done and how she's overcome a lot of obstacles to become the best version of herself. And you're a work in progress, correct?
I think I will be until I die, every day.
I think we all are. And until you realize that we can all, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Huh?
Every day growing, and my pastor gave that information to me. So, but it's always stuck with me. If you're not growing, you're dying. So I don't care how good of a funnel builder I am. I can always get better. Okay. Yeah. If you say you've arrived, that's when you need to do a check. You check yourself, look in the mirror and say, you know what, wait a second. Maybe you haven't arrived, because you can always get better no matter what. But I think that's awesome. And I think that you guys need to go to the show notes and take advantage of all that Jen has to offer. Let's go real quick back to fear. People fear a lot of things. I was very fearful. Doing Facebook Lives was one of my biggest fears I had. For some reason, I thought I was going to be lambasted. Whatever I talked about, I overthought it. I had to have a special, real in-depth topic, when really, if I could just talk about things that are on my mind, it was a conversation. So what do you do to conquer fear?
They say to conquer it is, if you're afraid of heights, you got to jump out of a plane. I think you've really just got to face it in the mirror and put your mind, wrap it around it, and say, I'm just moving forward, and face it head on. So I just try to get in the mindset, and you have to support the decision and the direction. So if you're kind of, I don't know if I should do this, then it's going to seem even more scary. But if you can wrap your mind and you say, you know what, I'm doing this, then
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no. But if you wrap your mind around it and you jump out of that plane, you're like, I'm doing this. No one pushed me. This was my decision. If you take accountability for all that, and it puts fear into a different perspective.
Have you ever jumped out of a plane?
I have. I've done it a couple times. I love it.
I did too. And I want to tell you something. She's very correct in saying that, because my pastor, once again, Jeremy, if you're listening to this was you. He's like, man, you got to try, skydiving. So I bought it. I pre-bought it. And leading up to it, I was terrified. And then they bring you in that room where you watch the guy in a beard tell you that basically you could die. And I'm watching this like, oh my gosh. The only reason so I get in the plane, I had this smile on my face. It was a fake smile, to be honest with you, at the point in time. And I'm like thinking to myself, what am I doing? What am I doing? I'm about to jump out of a plane. But only reason I was doing it at that point in time was I paid $200 something for it. I'm not going to waste my money. It's already done. So I get in the plane and I'm terrified, but halfway up, it was like a sense of peace came over me, and you jump, but it is invigorating. It's the craziest thing. And then you realize how many folds of skin you have on your face that are flopping around when they take the video of you. It's terrible. I look like I don't know. Everybody was like, my gosh, what's wrong with your face? I was like, I don't know. It's just like got a lot of skin on it, I guess. But yeah, it's a blast. Conquer your fears. Just do it. Of course, you want to think, is it a smart idea? You just don't jump out of a plane without a parachute,
right.
But do it. Once you realize that you can do it, do it. So I love it. So now it's time for the good old fashioned, super hyper fast Q&A round. So I'm going to ask some questions, very simple. And there's no wrong answer. Okay?
All right, let's do it.
Here we go. So question number 1, if you could box any celebrity, who would it be and why?
Oh my gosh. If I could box any celebrity. Oh gosh. I don't know. Muhammad Ali? I don't know, because he's the best. I don't know. That's a terrible answer.
Muhammad Ali. No, that's not a bad answer. No, good luck with that. Yeah. I don't know. I ask people all the time. I go, hey, listen, if you had a chance to get in the ring with Mike Tyson and you're given $100,000, would you do it? And a lot of times they say no. I do it. I would probably pay for it for the next 6 months, in the hospital, but still, I would do it, but just to experience it. But you know what? Maybe I'll rethink that. Okay, so Muhammad Ali, not a bad answer. What would your strategy be for the zombie apocalypse?
I would find an underground space and I'd bring a lot of frosting in there with me and I'd have a good time.
I would have the Forrest Gump one. Forrest Gump philosophy. Run. I would run. But yes, I like the idea with the ice cream, and having an underground bunker. That's a good idea. If your life was made to a movie, what actor would play you?
I'm probably going to say her name wrong, but Gal Gadot.
Gal Gadot?
Gal Gadot, Gadot. She's Israeli. Okay. She played Wonder Woman.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I never knew her name. I just thought of her as a Wonder Woman.
No,
Gal Gadot. And then favorite episode of Seinfeld?
No Soup for You.
No Soup for You. That's a very, very good episode. I love that episode. Okay, now, bonus question. Jerry, Elaine, George, or Kramer. If you don't know by now, I am a huge Seinfeld fanatic. I love Seinfeld. It got me through a lot of hard times. I would get home and I would watch Seinfeld, and I still watch it to this day. I can rewatch it. I love the episodes. Jerry, Elaine, George, or Kramer, who would you want to have as a neighbor and why?
Kramer.
I picked the same one. Yes, Kramer. Why?
Because he makes me laugh. Who doesn't want to laugh? Just come in my house and shake that hair around and just.
But let's be real. He is a mooch.
I mean, there's that, but at least he'll make you laugh.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't have. People come into my house. I have friends, and they're like, "Hey, can I get something to drink?" I'm like, "Bro, this is your house, man. Go ahead, make yourself at home." Be like Kramer. I always said, "Be like Kramer." That's fine. I don't care. And I have a blast watching them. So Kramer and the Soup Nazi.
Yes.
Excellent answers. So we're going to end off with this, Jen. First of all, I want to thank you so much for being on.
Yes,
You're a
thanks for
rock
having
star.
me.
I love your story, and I love to have you on again in the future when you write your next book. And guys, please make sure, guys and gals, make sure that you go to the show notes, check all that Jen has to offer. All the information will be there. And the final thought that you want to give to the Freddy O Show fam that you can feel have the biggest impact on them that they can start today, right now.
It comes down to those 7 words that were for me, and it's learning to love yourself. And again, if I could go back to my 12-year-old self when I started down this road of self-destruction, and I could look at her and tell her one thing, I would say, you know what? Being you is enough. And it's not trying to be someone else. It is connecting with yourself. It doesn't matter if you're tall. It doesn't matter if you're fat, if you're short. It doesn't matter what color you are. Connecting with yourself. And when you have that support internally, you can overcome, you can do anything.
You're a rock star, Jen. I sincerely appreciate you being on today.
Yeah, thanks again for having me.
You got it. A huge thank you to today's guest, Jen Sugermeyer. It's a true honor. Also, thank you to you as well for tuning in today's episode of The Freddy O Show. Also, make sure that you head over to winwithfred.com to check out the show notes, all that Jen has to offer. It'll be well worth your time to do that. Episode number 8 in the books. This is Freddy O, and until next time, stay focused, stay humble, and always stay hungry.